papers. We're in Hyde Park. I forgot your name, sir.
Edin.
Edin.
Edin, yeah.
Edin, lovely to meet you. Charles urged to cut links with the Saudis. You said that will never happen. Even though Jamal Khashoggi was murdered in cold blood in the Saudi consulate in Turkey, is it not time to cut ties with Saudi Arabia?
Well, if I'm coming from a loyalist kind of thing, like, as in sticking with the royals, then I would say, of course not. That's not even a question.
Why not?
Well, because we set up Saudi Arabia and the Sauds for a specific reason.
Why? Why was that?
Well, because at the time when we set up the Sauds, we set them up as a base so that we could begin to control the Middle East, one. And second, a bit later on, a few decades later, was of course the oil. So it's impossible to I mean, you can't.
So Jamal Khashoggi, the journalist who was murdered, he is a first cousin of Dodi Al-Fayed, Princess Diana's boyfriend back then, who died in the tunnel with her. Do you think that's a relevant point? Is it a funny coincidence that family has terrible luck?
I would say maybe, but I would say it's best to stick to the more...
Is it possible the same...
I would say for them and their family, they need to look at that, absolutely.
Well,
if you're being practical, when your family members are being, picked off, but I would say as a general...
family members picked up. Some people say that Charles, or perhaps his dad, Philip, had a role in arranging the death of Diana, and she was very worried about that.
I mean, there's this speculation that she had some information that she wanted to share.
And when things like this happen, we have to ask the question, who gains? Who gains from a Saudi journalist being murdered in the consulate in Istanbul? Certainly not Saudi Arabia, certainly not Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. No, could it be someone that wants to make him look bad, perhaps someone within Saudi Arabia? I mean, they've killed each other's family members before. So if anyone steps out of line in that country, they can be taken out.
Absolutely clear. I was talking to a Chinese guy and he was telling me how China could take over Britain, and I said to him, listen, in any society there's two wars that you can have. There is the general war, which is you get soldiers and you get tanks and aeroplanes, but there's a second war that you can do, which is what may be called guerrilla war, and that war is like when you take out the leaders. And so if you're talking about that kind of war, for instance, China is not a match for Britain. We have had our secret service for hundreds of years. And so therefore, we are so much more knowledgeable and got a wider web in the world. So, I mean, we can do that. Absolutely.
My feeling, you said this will never happen, cut links with Saudi Arabia. I suspect perhaps it's time that Britain and America will throw Saudi Arabia under the bus. And they've used them. I know you said it goes back 200 years plus. Maybe they've used them and now it's time to move on. And remember, before he got elected, Donald Trump said, and it was another one of the lies he told, that if he were elected he would reveal the truth about 9/11. Now he never even mentioned it, no one has picked him up on it, but I suspect he would implicate Saudi Arabia in that. And if you believe the story, the 19 hijackers, I think 15 of them were from Saudi Arabia. So certainly you could say Saudi Arabia had a role in 9/11. Why we attacked Iraq because of that, I have no idea. But I can see a time where, and it might be soon, where Saudi Arabia will be done away with in terms of Western alliance. And it's funny that Trump is actually, he's now trying to defend Saudi Arabia. He's trying to say, well, it's bad stuff. He wouldn't even admit what had happened, and Saudi Arabia said that he'd come out that Khashoggi was still alive, and then they admitted he was dead, and he died in a fist fight. Do you get in a fist fight with 15 guys, one of whom has an electric saw?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, these are things that have been going on for decades and in fact centuries. So it's not a new news.
It's not a new thing. Sorry.
Yeah, so
it's not a new thing. I just wonder, is it a new chapter? And maybe Saudi Arabia has had its day.
So my question to you would be, which I think people would be interested in, is what would you maybe guess is a new chapter then?
Maybe a closer alliance with Turkey than Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
As Turkey and Saudi Arabia have always been the rivals for being the leaders of the Muslim world. Saudi Arabia's got Mecca and Medina, but Turkey had the Ottoman Empire. And they are trying to sort of recreate the Ottoman Empire, and Erdogan sees himself as some kind of sultan of a new Ottoman Empire. If they become the legitimate leaders of the Muslim world, it would be better to have them on their side than Saudi Arabia, who people are falling out of love with. Even Muslims are criticising Saudi Arabia, and that's the home of the
A lot didn't like in the first place. They don't like Saudi Arabia. But one, because they think they're extremists, Islamic extremists, meaning like they don't allow women to drive, stuff like that.
Well, they've just changed that one.
So a lot of Islamists don't like them because they think they're too extreme in their Islam practice, if you like. Yeah. So I mean, I think the Islamic world would be, in general, be happy. They wouldn't be happy because it's the home, as you said, of
of Mecca and Medina, the two holy mosques.
Absolutely. I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, these things are going to continue. America, Canada have oil. Canada definitely has oil. Russia has oil. You know, it's just when they decide to tap it. You know, but you go for certain resources in certain areas so that you can control them areas, not just with a gun, but with resources. Resources is a very important control mechanism.
But if oil's going to run out, or we're going to switch to using non-fossil fuels,
I think so.
Then there'll be a new resource, right?
Yeah, but of course it has to be controlled. There are ways to run your car on water. These engines that we use can run on water. I've seen it myself. But they obviously need to be in control of that. So I think the way they're doing that is basically to bring us down the electric sides of at least here in the Western world, electric sides.
That seems to be the way it's going.
That's why, you know, you get some people, electric. Yeah, I mean, they're going to control it, and that's what I think we've got to be clear on. The big industrialists, the international industrialists, they're going to do that. So, like Shell and all Chevron and all these big companies, they've got to now morph themselves into that. So, in the next following decades, I think that's what we'll see.